It's time for another Dice Tower review with Z. Garcia.
Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at the latest expansion to Elder Sign, Omens of the Deep, which continues the trend set in place by the last couple of expansions to take the game down a much more story-driven, push-your-luck, dice-rolling path. And so in this one, you and the crew on the ship in which you are have a strange calling from the oceans, and so you are drawn to a place out in the high seas. You are traveling that way. You'll be attacked by beasts. You will find islands along the way. You are going to encounter strange rituals, all sorts of good Cthulhu-y, scary stuff. So, let me show you what's in the box here, just sort of how this works. I'm not going to be telling you how the base game works. If you want to know how Elder Sign works, go check out our video for that. So I'm assuming you already know how to play Elder Sign. I'm just going to show you what's in here and how it kind of changes the original experience that the game offered. So here's everything that comes in the expansion. You get new investigators, you get new Ancient One cards, you are going to get a few new common item cards and unique items, all those things to shuffle into the deck. And you do get, however, if you haven't seen this in one of the other expansions, a decent amount of skill cards that you can use. It's a brand new deck that you can gain cards from. And then, like some of the previous expansions, some of the later expansions, I should say, in this version of the game, you are going to be playing with a brand new adventure deck, replacing any other adventure deck you may have had before. And in this case, it's split into two stages. Stage 1 right here is what you're going to start with, and at some point in the game, you will travel to Stage 2. And the story will dictate that. And so to set up the game, you are going to replace the gate card with the entrance card with this entrance card with the ship upon which you are. And you are also going to put this Dark Waters card with a track on it on the table. Put the token right there where it says. And you are attempting to manage this. It's another resource. You're trying to get all the way over here and travel to Stage 2, where you are going to really go up against some serious challenges, but also start gaining some Elder Signs in a much more productive way. You also want to avoid this track falling all the way over here. So to set up the game, you're going to shuffle all these things into their respective decks. You are going to set these Deep One tokens aside. They do not go in the bag, so they're just set aside. You'll pick your characters like everything else. You're going to shuffle up the two stages of the Mythos cards here separately. They work tied into the they tie into the adventure cards. And then you are going to start with these 3 face up, 3 face down at the beginning of the game. After that, then every time you replace one, it just comes into play face down. It tells you up here how difficult it is. Green, yellow, red being sort of a rough idea of how much of a challenge it'll be. And it'll tell you something that happens right here. You go, you do this thing at the bottom. If it says may, then you may do it. Then you flip it and deal with it. And it might have an entry effect. That means when you flip it for the first time or when you get there, you do it. It might have a terror effect, symbols like everything else. And so 3 face up, 3 face down at the beginning of the game. And then you are off. You're going to see some new symbols on some of these cards like this one right here. Let's see if you can get a glimpse of that. It looks like a little ship's wheel. And that one will manage this token right here. There are also 4 special adventure cards which sort of manage the story in the game with a little more structure than these. Now these are all thematically tied into you being on the high seas, traveling towards some strange calling. But these tell that story a little more closely. And so you're going to put one on the table, and at some point when you complete this, you will replace it with the one it tells you to replace it with. And so you have the calling, then after that you have the echoes of the dream here, and at some point you're going to Stage 2, where you'll bring in the stage 2 cards, and then you are dealing with this card here, and eventually the sleeper wakes and it gets serious. But then again, it's also quite a boon if you're able to pull this off. You get 4 Elder Signs for this. That's amazing. You're also probably going to die to it. And so that's how that works. Couple of other things that I want to mention just to give you an idea again of the flavor this is going to give you. It gives you a few new items that look like monster tokens, but they're not. They're mission tokens that go in the bag. And when these come out, you will deal with them just like you do with the monsters. But then they give you some sort of boost when you complete them instead of just some points to go and spend, you know. So, for example, this one here says, Wave of Destruction. You may fulfill this mission to return all monsters from all adventures to the Monster Cup. So there's that one. And then this one says, Walking the Ley Lines. You may fulfill this mission to gain 1 Elder Sign. And so you can spend what these require to fulfill them and get a real nice boost. You have to spend trophies on these to fulfill them. So you have to beat them and then fulfill them with trophies, but they're quite powerful, as you can see. Besides that, you also have these 3 tokens here, which are sort of wards. You start with one random one. Let's say I get this one, the red one. At some point when you go to stage 2, you flip this card over. Let's move these real quick. Flip that over. If you have any of these, you'll be able to block those spaces, but the other ones will lock dice in place. And so those will be not available to you. It's possible you'll gain more of these. It's possible you'll lose some of them. But that's what happens when you hit stage 2. And so you want to spend stage 1 attempting to suit up, attempting to get these so you don't have to deal with these being locked in place. And by the way, if the elder one, the ancient one ever wakes up, then anything that's here is completely gone at that point. And again, you're probably dead anyway. So the last thing I want to show you here is the entrance card itself. It's neat because if you are here at the beginning of the clock phase, then you can spend some trophies to get an effect for yourself or someone else. And also, at some point, if too many of the deep ones rise up and attack your ship, you might have to flip it over, and you are now on the wreckage of that ship, and the conversions are pretty bad, actually. They drop quite a bit, and you can only do a couple of new things. So that's basically it. The cards here are binary, as they've been in some of the other expansions, but they'll give you a choice between 2 things. They are very nicely thematic. I do like that they're broken up into 2 stages because they can sort of further the story as you go. And so they'll let you do, 1 of 2 things. So, for example, this one says that there are deep ones sighted, and you can formulate a plan, which is retreat the Omen token by 2 and remove a deep one, or you can attack head-on, which means a deep one appears. And again, these tokens set aside here are just, you have a pool of them set aside. They're not always identical, though, on the front. The fronts are actually different, but they will be set aside ready for you to put into play. So that's basically it. That should give you an idea of how the game works. You have your 3 elder ones here, or ancient ones, whatever you want to call them, and you do get another Cthulhu in this version of the game. So there it is, another version of the Cthulhu beastie. But that's a pretty good idea of how the whole thing operates. If you're familiar with some of the later expansions before this one, then some of the elements here will seem familiar to you, but some of it is different. This idea is different. The track is different. The ship flipping over is different. But that's what you get. So let's go back up top, and let me tell you some thoughts on this expansion for the game. As I said in the intro, this one continues that trend towards more story-driven expansions in Elder Sign, and I love that direction that they've given the game. The expansions, I've liked all of them, but they have gotten better for me, and I think this one continues that trend. It's at least as good as the last one, Omens of Ice, which took you to a very specific setting and really put you there, gave you a story that was focused, that had stages, that developed well while still being just a push-your-luck dice-chucking game. And this one continues that trend. I like the setting in it a lot. I like those little mechanisms that they've put around the original core of the game, like the track you have to manage, those amulets you need to gather for the final showdown. Being on the ship and possibly having it wrecked is going to be a huge hurt if that happens. But it's thematic, and I like that a lot. This is really solid, really fun. So I'm happy with what they've done here. I enjoy it, and I would say if you've enjoyed the previous expansions for the game, I think you're going to dig this one too. Nothing necessarily revolutionary. It's a lot like the last expansion. But I really liked the last expansion, and I like what they're doing with the game. And so if you feel that same way, I would recommend it. If you have not played any of the expansions at all to Elder Sign, I would perhaps still go and get the first one that they came out with, because that one was sort of just filling in the holes in the original game. But then these almost story packs for the other ones, I would say get them in whatever order you want. Whatever appeals to you the most. So if you want the one set on the ocean with Cthulhu and all of that, the Sunken City, then this one. If you want the ice one, and you like that setting, Omens of Ice. But really fun stuff. So for me, Omens of the Deep here is going to get a seal of excellence. I would very much recommend it if you like Elder Sign already. You want a little more story, you want a little more action, more focus, you're going to get it right here.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.